In the heart of the green and golden land called Lufuno, there lived a girl named Kamara. She had skin like deep bronze, eyes wide with wonder, and a voice as soft as a morning breeze. From the day she was born, Kamara was the sun in her mother's sky. Her mother, Azinza, was known all over the village, not because she was the chief's wife, but because of the love she gave so freely. She sang while grinding millet, braided the neighbors' children's hair with laughter, and wrapped Kamara in stories each night by the fire. Kamara followed her mother everywhere. Azinza called her my little drum because Kamara's feet never stopped dancing. The bond between mother and daughter was like a vine and its tree, tight, rooted, and beautiful. But good seasons do not last forever. When Kamara turned 12, Azinza fell ill. Her songs became whispers, her laughter vanished. The healer came with herbs, the women prayed with oil, but Azinza's strength faded like the last flame in a lantern. One night, with Kamara's head resting on her lap, Azinza gave her a final gift, a whisper. "You are my fire, Kamara. You are meant for more than pain. Be brave no matter what." And then she was gone. After the burial, the house felt empty, even though people filled it with visits and food. The air hung heavy. Kamara would sit by the door waiting to hear her mother's voice in the wind, but it never came. Her father, Chief Damba, was a tall, powerful man respected by all, but he was not good with grief. He threw himself into work, leaving Kamara with silence. Within a year, he remarried. Her name was Lemba. She came from a distant village with smooth skin, perfect teeth, and hands that never touched anything dirty. She arrived with honeyed words and a basket full of perfumes, smiling like the moon and promising to love Kamara as her own. At first, it felt like a second chance. Lemba braided Kamara's hair gently, sang lullabies at night, and made yam porridge with roasted fish, Kamara's favorite. For a few weeks, Kamara dared to believe that joy might return, but sweetness can turn sour. Little by little, Lemba's kindness dried up. She stopped answering when Kamara spoke. She rolled her eyes when Kamara entered the room. One day, she forgot to give her food. The next, she told her to sweep the compound again because she missed a leaf. Kamara didn't understand. She tried harder, fetching water without being asked, folding Lemba's wrappers, even calling her mama, but nothing pleased the woman. And then the cruelty sharpened. Behind closed doors, Lemba would grab Kamara's arms hard enough to leave bruises. She'd whisper with venom, "You are just dead weight. If your father didn't pity you, you'd be living in the bush." Kamara wanted to tell her father, but he was always away, visiting other villages, handling trade, holding meetings. When he returned, Lemba became a different person. She served him pounded cassava with goat meat, sat at his feet like a loving wife, and spoke softly about how lazy Kamara had become. "She refuses to learn," she would say with a gentle sigh. "I try so hard." Chief Damba would frown, glance at Kamara and say, "You must be obedient, child. Lemba only wants the best for you." Kamara's heart cracked like dry earth. Each day began before sunrise. Lemba would yank Kamara from sleep and send her to the river to fetch water in a calabash too heavy for her thin arms. If even a drop spilled, she was sent back. She scrubbed floors until her knuckles bled, washed Lemba's clothes until her skin peeled. And when the food was ready, Lemba would feed the dogs first. "You want to eat?" she'd say. "Finish your work. Maybe I'll save you bones." Kamara would go to bed hungry, curled on a mat beside the kitchen stove, while Lemba and Chief Damba slept on a soft bed inside. One night, Kamara dared to complain. "I'm cold," she whispered. Lemba smiled, the cruel kind of smile. "Then sleep with the goats." She dragged Kamara outside and shoved her into the animal shed. Kamara wept quietly, the scent of dung all around her, hugging herself for warmth. She whispered to the stars, "Mama, if you can hear me, don't forget me." But only the crickets answered. Despite everything, Kamara stayed strong. She never shouted, she never ran. She remembered her mother's voice. "You are my fire." The villagers knew her as the quiet girl who helped everyone. She carried firewood for elders, comforted crying babies, and always smiled, even when her eyes looked tired. People admired her beauty and spirit, but no one saw her pain. No one imagined what Lemba was hiding behind her sweet voice and expensive wrappers. One day, something unexpected happened. The young prince of Lufuno, a noble boy named Makori, visited the village. He was tall, graceful and curious. As he passed the well, he saw Kamara lifting a heavy pot for an old woman. The sun kissed her skin, and her kindness glowed brighter than gold. Prince Makori kept watching her from afar during his visits. He smiled at her. She blushed. He asked questions about her. Soon the whole village whispered, "The prince is enchanted by Kamara." Lemba heard, and her heart boiled like hot oil. That night, as the moon drifted behind the clouds and the wind curled softly through the reed roofs of Lufuno, Lemba lay on her mat with a crooked smile stretching across her face. Her hands were folded calmly over her chest, her breathing slow. But her mind danced like fire. Tomorrow, she thought. Tomorrow, I'll finally be free of that cursed girl. For years, Kamara had endured everything: hunger, scorn, bruises hidden behind chores. She had withstood the whip of Lemba's tongue and the weight of Lemba's jealousy. And yet somehow she remained strong. Somehow she shone. And now that strength threatened everything. If Prince Makori truly loved her, everything would change. Kamara would rise, and Lemba would lose. "So," she whispered to the night, "she will vanish like dust on the wind." The next morning, before the cocks crowed, before the village fires were lit, Lemba slipped into Kamara's tiny corner by the kitchen. Her voice was unusually sweet. "Wake up, my child," she said, brushing Kamara's cheek with a touch so soft it might have made a stranger weep. "Today is a sacred day, one your mother would have wanted." Kamara sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. "Sacred?" Lemba nodded, placing a hand gently on her chest. "It's time to honor your late mother's spirit. There is an old ritual, a powerful one, that must be done deep in the forest where no other eyes can see. Only the pure-hearted are allowed." The mention of her mother stilled Kamara. Her throat tightened. A ritual? For Mama Azinza? She had never heard of such a thing, but Lemba's eyes looked so full of sorrow, so real, that doubt didn't stand a chance. "I'm ready," Kamara whispered, and stood. The two walked through the sleeping village, the sky still dark blue, stars blinking out one by one. No one stirred, no one saw. The air was crisp. The earth smelled of dew and old leaves. Kamara followed Lemba through the winding paths of the bush, deeper than she had ever gone before. The trees grew taller, their branches twisting like old bones. The path disappeared. The light dimmed. The silence changed. Even the birds had stopped singing. "Lemba, where are we going?" Kamara asked, glancing around. Lemba did not turn. Almost there. Finally they reached a clearing, and in the center stood an iron cage, ancient, rusted, but strong. So strong, Kamara's steps slowed. Her heart ticked louder. "What is this place?" Then she saw them, two glowing yellow eyes peering at her from the shadows of the cage. A growl trembled through the air. A panther, big, lean, its black coat gleaming even in the low light. It paced behind the bars, muscles shifting beneath its skin, hunger flashing in its teeth. Kamara froze. "Lemba?" Lemba finally turned to face her. Gone was the softness. Gone was the sorrow. Her eyes were cold. Her mouth curled into something wicked. "This," she said, grabbing Kamara's wrist with iron fingers, "is where your journey ends." Before Kamara could move, could scream, could even think, Lemba shoved her forward with all her might. Kamara stumbled, hitting the dirt floor of the cage hard, the breath knocked out of her chest. Clang. The door slammed shut. Click, the lock turned. Kamara scrambled to her feet, hands gripping the iron bars, face pale with terror. "Let me out! Lemba, please!" But Lemba only laughed. "Not like a woman, like a jackal. You really thought I'd let you take everything from me? That I'd let you become queen?" Her eyes sparkled with hate. "You were never meant to survive. Your father is a fool, and no one will come looking for you. No one." Kamara's voice cracked. "He'll know, he'll come." Lemba leaned closer. "I'll tell them you ran away, that you were always restless, that you couldn't handle the responsibilities of a chief's daughter, and they'll believe me." Behind Kamara, the panther's growl deepened. Its claws scraped against the cage floor. It was watching, waiting. Lemba took one last look at Kamara, shaking, crying, trapped, then dusted off her hands like she'd just finished cleaning the floor. "Goodbye, little orphan," and she walked away. Kamara's screams followed her, but only the trees heard. The iron bars behind Kamara were cold against her back, but the breath of the panther in front of her was hot, thick, wild, alive. The beast circled slowly, its massive paws brushing the dirt with a silence that made her tremble. Its golden eyes glowed in the dim light of the cage, never blinking, never looking away. Kamara's heart thudded in her chest like a war drum. She could hear it pounding in her ears. Her hands shook, her mouth was dry, she had nowhere to run. The cage was too small, the corners too sharp, and the creature too close. Still, in the middle of her fear, a voice from her childhood rose in her mind, her father's voice calm and deep like the river after rain. "Even the wildest beast can feel fear, Kamara, but if you show it peace, it might not harm you." She remembered the day he had said those words. She was 7, and a pack of wild dogs had wandered into the village. The other children screamed and ran, but her father had knelt down slowly, eyes soft, hands out, and the dogs had stilled. "This," he had whispered, "is how you speak to a creature's heart." Now in this cage far from home, Kamara had no one else but that memory. So she drew in a long, deep breath. The panther's growl rumbled low in its throat, and her instincts screamed at her to stand, to fight, to claw at the bars. But she did none of that. Instead, she lowered herself to the ground, slowly, carefully, until she was kneeling in the dirt, her body small, her hands open and resting on her lap. She kept her head slightly bowed. She didn't dare look the animal in the eye. Her father had taught her, staring into the eyes of a wild creature is a challenge, a fight for dominance. And Kamara did not want to fight. She wanted to survive. The panther paused its pacing. Its breath grew slower. Its ears twitched. Kamara took another breath, this one even slower than the last, and in a voice no louder than the rustle of leaves, she spoke. "I am not your enemy." Her words quivered in the air, fragile but full of soul. The panther tilted its head. One ear flicked, its eyes narrowed, not in rage but in something else. Curiosity? Kamara's heart thundered. Her knees ached. Her palms sweated. "I know you're hungry," she said softly. "And afraid. I am too." She slowly lifted one hand, palm up, and held it in front of her, still kneeling. Her body was shaking, but her voice stayed calm. "I don't want to harm you, I just want to go home." The panther took one cautious step forward, its massive paw landing softly. Then another. The sound of its breath filled the cage. Kamara's fingers curled slightly, her body screaming at her to crawl away, but she held her ground. Now the creature was close. So close she could see the roughness of its nose, the shine of its teeth, the soft rise and fall of its chest. Then she noticed something else. Its paw. It limped ever so slightly. She looked down at its front leg and saw it, a long, sharp thorn buried deep in the flesh, just above its foot. The area around it was swollen, the fur matted with dried blood. The panther wasn't just hungry, it was in pain. Kamara's fear was still there, sitting heavy in her belly like a stone. But something else began to rise. Pity. She had known pain too. She had known what it meant to be trapped, abandoned and wounded with no one to help. Maybe this creature was not a monster. Maybe it was just another prisoner, just like her. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "You're hurt." The panther's eyes softened, just a fraction. "You've been fighting to survive, act like me." She stretched her hand forward an inch, then another. The beast flinched slightly but didn't back away. "I want to help you." Her fingers hovered near the thorn. She could feel the warmth of its breath, the rumble of its chest. If it chose to lash out now, she wouldn't survive. But she couldn't turn away. Her hand gently touched the paw. The panther let out a growl, sharp. Warning. Kamara's muscles tensed, but she didn't pull back. "I know it hurts," she whispered. "Just a moment more." She gripped the thorn. One quick motion. She pulled. The panther roared, a sound so loud it echoed through the forest like a storm. Kamara fell backward, scrambling away, her breath caught in her throat. But the beast didn't pounce. It looked down at its paw, flexed it, then looked up at her. Its golden eyes, once wild and burning, now held something else. Something softer. The beast took a step forward, then, to Kamara's shock, gently bent its head and licked her hand. She gasped. It was not just sparing her. It was thanking her. For a long moment, they sat there, girl and panther, survivors of betrayal, surrounded by silence. Kamara no longer felt alone. She whispered, "We're the same, you and I." She sat beside the animal, tears falling freely now, not from fear, but from release. She had found comfort in the most unexpected place, the jaws of death. Hours passed. The forest outside remained quiet. No one came. Kamara knew that if she stayed here, the hunger and exhaustion would finish her before anything else. Kamara's fingers traced the rusted bars of the cage, her eyes desperate, her heart pounding beneath her ribs like a trapped bird. The iron was old, rough with age, but it held firm. No matter how she shook them, the bars barely trembled. She looked around the tiny space, damp earth, claw marks in the dirt, splashes of dried blood. This cage was made to hold things until they broke. Her throat tightened. No one was coming. No one even knew she was here. And Lemba, the woman who was supposed to care for her, had made sure of that. Kamara's gaze drifted to the panther now lying quietly beside her. It was powerful, graceful, dangerous. But more than that. It was strong. Her breath caught as a thought flickered through her mind, a wild, impossible, hopeful thought. Maybe she wasn't truly alone. She crawled closer, inch by inch, moving slowly so she didn't startle the beast. Her fingers trembled as she reached out. "I need your help," she whispered, barely louder than the wind. She placed her hand on its shoulder, gently like one might touch fire. The muscles beneath her palm tensed. The panther flinched slightly, its golden eyes shifting toward her. But it didn't snarl, it didn't move away. Kamara took that as a sign. "We can't stay here," she murmured. "You helped me once. I have to believe you'll help me again." She crawled to the cage door and tugged at the bars with all her might. They creaked but held. She turned back to the panther and looked at its injured paw. The thorn she had pulled was gone, but its strength had returned. She guided the animal to the bars, placing its paw against the metal. "Push," she whispered. "Please." The panther tilted its head as if trying to understand. Then it growled softly, planted its weight, and lunged. Boom! The entire cage shook. The bars groaned. Kamara gasped. Again, the panther slammed. Its shoulder into the door, this time with more force. Dust trickled from the hinges. The rust gave way. Another strike, another snap. The metal bent, just enough for a slender girl to fit through. Kamara froze. She touched the edge of the twisted bar, then the space where the lock had cracked open. She was free. Tears filled her eyes, not just from relief, but from the sheer disbelief of it all. She turned back to the panther, her body trembling. What now? Would it attack her? Would it leave? But instead the beast stepped through the gap, brushing past her, its side warm against her arm. It turned back and stared at her, not with hunger, not with rage, but with loyalty, as if it was waiting for her next move. Kamara wiped her tears, nodded once and whispered, "Let's go." The forest was dense, wild, and full of sharp things. But Kamara ran, her bare feet slicing against thorns, her dress catching on branches. She didn't care. The air was thick with heat and the cries of unseen birds. The sky above shifted from gold to blue, and still she ran. The panther ran beside her, a silent shadow, protecting her on all sides. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They were survivors, together. Every step took her farther from the cage. Every heartbeat brought her closer to truth, and closer to home. Back in the village of Lufuno, the drums beat loud and steady. The lanterns hung like stars in the trees. The air was thick with roasted meats, laughter, and the sound of wooden sandals tapping against the earth. It was a day of joy, or so it seemed. In the center of the square, Lemba stood tall beside Prince Makori, her hands folded sweetly over her belly, her voice smooth as silk. "Poor Kamara," she sighed. "She must have fled into the forest. She was never strong enough for this life." The villagers nodded, some with pity, others with unease. "She always seemed troubled," one woman murmured. "Quiet girls go missing," an elder added grimly. Prince Makori listened, but his eyes were distant. His heart stirred with doubt. He had never believed Kamara to be weak, and something about Lemba's story itched at the back of his mind. Still, he said nothing. Lemba smiled, victorious. Soon he would forget her. Soon Kamara would be only a memory. But then the drums stopped. A silence fell so heavy it crushed the air. Heads turned, mouths opened. And there, at the edge of the square, where the jungle met the village, stood Kamara. Her dress was torn, her feet were bloody. Her face was stained with tears and dust, but she stood tall, and beside her, the panther. Gasps broke like waves across the square. Some villagers stepped back in fear. Children clung to their mothers. Elders gripped their staffs. The panther stood calm, golden eyes glowing under the torchlight. It did not snarl. It did not attack. It waited. Kamara stepped forward. Lemba dropped her gourd of wine, the clay shattering at her feet. Prince Makori stood, eyes wide, breath caught. "Kamara," he whispered. She met his gaze. "I'm alive." The words hit the air like thunder. The fire crackled in the center of the square, its light dancing against Kamara's face. She stood tall, feet planted like a tree whose roots would not shift. Her dress was torn, her body still marked by the forest's fury. But her voice was clear, rising above the heavy silence. "I was thrown into a cage," she said, her eyes scanning the stunned faces of the villagers, "trapped with a starving panther." Gasps spread like ripples on water. Kamara's breath shook, but she did not stop. "Someone wanted me gone." The villagers turned, eyes narrowing, whispers rising like smoke as they shifted their gazes toward Lemba. Some of them had known her since she was a girl, seen her pour wine at weddings, sing during harvest, but none of them had ever looked at her the way they were now, like something dangerous had lived among them unnoticed. Prince Makori stepped forward, his royal robes barely rustled, but the fire in his eyes burned bright. "Who did this to you?" he asked softly. Kamara looked at him, and for a long moment the weight of everything hung in the space between them. Then she turned and faced Lemba. The panther beside her growled low and menacing, its golden eyes locked on the woman who once held all the power, and for the first time since she entered this village, Lemba looked afraid. The square was still. Even the trees seemed to lean in to listen. Kamara's voice rang out like the clashing of iron. "I didn't run away." She took a step forward. "I was left to die." The crowd stirred. Some clutched their chest, others shook their heads, but no one spoke. "She led me deep into the jungle," Kamara continued, her voice rising with each word. "She told me it was a sacred ritual to honor my mother, but it was a lie." Her voice trembled, but her spine remained straight. "She led me to a cage and locked me in. With a starving panther, she thought I'd be devoured before the sun touched the sky." A woman near the back gasped and covered her mouth. "She returned to you all and said I had run away, that I was weak, foolish. But the truth is..." Kamara's eyes burned now, and her hand clenched into a fist. "She feared me." Lemba's lips parted as if to protest, but no sound came. "She feared I would marry the prince," Kamara said, nodding toward Makori. "She feared my father would never stop loving me. She feared that my strength would expose her cruelty." A hush fell. The truth, once hidden like rot under stone, now rose like a storm. All eyes turned to Lemba. Her skin had gone pale, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, her mouth opened and closed like a fish flung onto dry sand. Here's nonsense," she sputtered, forcing a laugh that fell flat. "She's confused. The jungle, it does things to the mind. You can't believe her. Kamara stepped closer, the panther growling beside her. Then tell them, she said, her voice as calm as the night before a flood. If you didn't do this, where did you think I went? Lemba's eyes darted across the crowd. I thought she left. She was always restless. Left where? Kamara asked, voice rising. Into the forest alone? With no food, no water, and you didn't send anyone to find me? The villagers were no longer whispering. Their faces were shifting. Anger, betrayal, disbelief, turning darker by the moment. She's lying, someone shouted. You wanted the girl gone. She's a monster, another voice joined. Witch! From the edge of the crowd, a man staggered forward. His face was pale, eyes wide. His hands trembled like dry leaves in the wind. It was Chief Damba. Lemba, he whispered, his voice barely above the crackle of the fire. Tell me this isn't true. She turned to him, her composure finally breaking. I was protecting our home, she cried. She would have taken everything. I had no choice. Damba's face crumbled. He looked at Kamara, then at Lemba. No choice? His voice cracked, filled with a hurt that had no name. You had every choice. You could have loved her. He stepped forward, his shoulders shaking. You could have been a mother to her. But instead you became her jailer. Lemba shook her head, backing away. They'll believe me. I'm the wife of the chief. You are no wife of mine, Damba growled, his voice now thunder. You tried to kill my daughter. That was the moment everything changed. The crowd surged forward, voices overlapping, cries for justice, screams of rage. Cast her out. She must pay. Justice for Kamara? Lemba stumbled, eyes wide. No, you can't do this. I am still your leader's wife. But her words were swallowed by the noise. And then the panther stepped forward. Its growl sliced through the air like a blade. Lemba froze. The beast didn't pounce. It didn't need to. Its presence alone was enough to make her legs tremble. Please, she whimpered. Stay back. Kamara watched her, not with hatred but with something deeper. Something that came from pain, from survival. She had nothing left to say. Lemba collapsed to her knees, her entire body trembling. Tears streamed down her cheeks like rivers after a storm. Her voice cracked as she begged, Please, please, have mercy. But mercy did not come. Not from the panther, whose low growl rumbled through the village like distant thunder. Not from the villagers, whose eyes now saw her for who she truly was. And certainly not from fate, which had finally turned its gaze upon her. The same people who once smiled at her, bowed to her, even believed her lies, now stood unmoved, their faces hard as carved stone. The girl she had tried to destroy stood before her, Kamara, unflinching, unshaken, unbreakable. The village elders stepped forward, their cloaks brushing the earth. The oldest among them, a woman whose skin was like folded bark and whose eyes held the weight of years, spoke first. You are no longer welcome here, Lemba, she said, her voice cold as mountain wind. You have no family, no home, no place among our people. Lemba gasped, reaching out a shaking hand. Please, I have nowhere to go. I was wrong, but I— Then let the forest take you, said another elder, his staff thumping once against the ground. The same forest you dragged Kamara into. The villagers stepped aside, parting like water before a stone. They made a path, not to the market, not to her house, but to the trees, to the jungle that had nearly devoured Kamara. Lemba turned, hoping someone, anyone, would speak, up for her. But she saw only silent, unforgiving eyes. The panther took a step forward and let out one final growl. That was all it took. With a strangled cry, Lemba stumbled to her feet and fled, barefoot into the wilderness. Her figure vanished among the trees, and she was never seen again. The square stood quiet, the firelight flickering across stunned faces. Kamara turned to the people. Some looked away in shame, others began to cry. But Kamara was not looking for their guilt. Her eyes had already moved to the edge of the crowd, where her father stood, Chief Damba. Once a man of strength, now a man hollowed out by truth. His eyes were red, His hands shook. He stepped forward slowly, as if unsure the ground would hold him. "My daughter," he whispered, his voice barely a breath. Kamara said nothing. "I failed you," he said, louder now. "I was blind, and because of that you suffered." He dropped to his knees before her. Tears filled Kamara's eyes. "I let her poison my heart," Damba wept, "and I turned away from my own blood. I don't deserve your forgiveness." Kamara knelt too and took his hands into hers. "You were lost," she whispered, "but you found your way back." She took a shaky breath. "I forgive you, Baba." And with those words, the two wept in each other's arms. The wound between them beginning to close, thread by painful thread. The villagers watched silent, many wiping tears from their own faces. They had all played a part in Kamara's pain, in their silence, their assumptions, their blind loyalty. And now they too bowed their heads. But before grief could settle too long, a voice rose, strong and clear. "And you are the bravest woman I have ever known." Kamara looked up to see Prince Makori standing before her, his posture regal but his eyes soft with awe. "I watched you," he said, "as you stood against cruelty, as you forgave the man who failed you. Your heart, your strength, they shine brighter than any crown." He paused and then slowly dropped to one knee. The village gasped. Makori looked up at her. "I came searching for a bride," he said, "but I found a queen." He took a ring made of gold and carved wood from his sash, a blend of royal and wild, and held it up. "If you'll have me, I would be honored to stand beside you as your husband, your friend, your protector." Kamara's breath caught in her throat. She looked into his eyes and saw no pity, no debt, only deep, pure respect. She smiled, the pain of the past falling like dry leaves from her heart. "Yes," she said. The drums exploded. The square filled with song, clapping and cheers. Children danced. Old women threw handfuls of flower petals. Men lifted gourds of palm wine into the air. It was no longer a night of betrayal. It had become a night of rebirth. Kamara stood in the center of it all, not as the servant girl they once ignored, but as a woman who had risen from ashes. She turned, and there, at the edge of the square, the panther sat, quiet, calm, watching. Its golden eyes glowed under the torchlight. It had not run back to the forest. It stayed, beside her. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Kamara became more than just a bride. She was a leader, a voice for the quiet, a shelter for the hurt, a reminder that strength can live in the smallest, most battered hearts. The village changed. Children were taught not just to listen, but to speak. Wives were no longer silenced by fear. Fathers began to believe their daughters, and the story of Kamara, the girl who had once been caged with death, spread like fire across the lands. It was told in quiet rooms, in crowded marketplaces, by elders under starlit skies. They spoke of the girl who had faced a beast and healed it, who had faced a village and awakened it. And always, always, they ended the tale with a whisper. She tamed the darkness and walked out with light. Kamara and Prince Makori ruled with wisdom and compassion. But Kamara was not just his queen by name. She was his equal in every way. When she spoke, even the oldest elders listened. When she passed, children ran beside her. And yet, despite the power and love that now surrounded her, Kamara never forgot. Sometimes, when the moon was high and the world was still, she would walk to the edge of the forest, alone. She would stand in silence, feeling the wind on her face, the earth beneath her bare feet. And though she never saw it, she always knew, somewhere out there in the shadows beyond the trees, a pair of golden eyes watched over her. The panther, her silent guardian, her fellow survivor, her legend. Sometimes, the ones meant to destroy. You will be the reason you rise. Kamara's courage teaches us that even in the darkest cages, light can grow. True strength is not in fighting with hate, but in surviving with hope, healing with love, and standing tall with truth. And sometimes, even a beast will protect the one who shows it kindness. If this tale of bravery touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful African stories that inspire, teach, and uplift. Tap the bell so you never miss a moment of magic from our village to yours.